What's up guys, Bo here again, and in this entry I want to talk to you guys about an issue that's very prevalent in society and just amongst human beings in general, right? And it is this tendency for us to take something, right, that represents either our greatest fears or our greatest adoration, and basically encapsulate it into a singular entity, what I call an idol, a mental idol. So there's this tendency for human beings to idolize things, right? And you notice how the word idolize is very close to the word idealize, right? And essentially that is what we are doing when we do this. So let me go into what this is, right? What am I talking about here? Well, basically, there are things in life that are very grey, right? There exist grey areas in life, right? And left alone, they are very confusing, right? I myself am someone who loves grey areas, right? Nuances, but the majority of people do not, right? And even to an extent, someone like me, there are some areas where I don't appreciate, there being grey areas, but those areas that we are frightened of, those situations that we fear, like it is the uncertainty that really drives that fear to to its very fullest. And so what we tend to do, either as like some kind of psychological defense mechanism, is we assign this singular entity to it, right? This idol that then basically gives us, mental repose, mental peace. It's therapeutic to us. So, for example, we all like to blame the government. We all love to blame the government for everything that's going wrong, that's fucked up in society, right? There's this, if only this fucking this politician wasn't in power, or if only this party were not in power. Well, that's not the best example. It's rather so. Okay, so like corporations, for example. We like to blame corporations for destroying the economy or polluting the markets, right? And we like to think of these giant corporations as being kind of the result of this one evil, tyrannical CEO, or like a board of directors, this league of extraordinary gentlemen, that is kind of pulling, that's kind of calling the shots, in the background. Another good one is like the Illuminati, right? There's people talking about how the Illuminati are spreading messages in the media and like pulling the strings of like corporations and banks, and like they're secretly behind all of the the global banking system, controlling the money, the economies of the world, right? And we like to come up with these little, these grandiose, conspiracy theories of like why our lives are fucked up, what is fucking us up in life. And so this is the tendency that we have, right? And it is more or less, a defense mechanism against, the fears of life, right? And really, it's not as simple as that, right? We have to recognize that when we start to do this, right, and this is very difficult, because, these idols that we've constructed in our minds, they represent, like I said, our greatest fears. And, and kind of contrasting that, mirroring that, also kind of what we deem as salvation. So we like to project our fears onto these idols. So we have bad idols, but we also have good idols where, onto whom we project our hopes and dreams, kind of thing. Our hopes, are symbols of salvation, right? And they're both dangerous because they're they're basically it's basically faulty thinking, right? Because it excuses us from, you know, taking responsibility for our own actions and for our own realities, right? It's easy to put all of the onus on, like, you know, on an idol, and say that that person has all the power and you're powerless to stop them or to interfere with them, or, you know, or that, you know, indeed, like, this idol has ultimate, well, it is basically the Messiah that's going to bring about, you know, all kinds of positive change. It's easy to think in that way, but the reality is, well, not even that. You have to consider, right? You have to consider at some point the possibility that no such thing exists, right? These idols could potentially very well be just constructions that we've concocted, that we've fabricated in our minds, and it might not necessarily be true, right? And then once you go into that kind of train of thought, that kind of dark trail of thinking, then you have some interesting realizations, right? And that is that, you know, it's not as simple as, well, okay, for example, right? I'll give a tangible example. Right, so we think that there's this evil person that's pulling, or a group of people that's pulling the strings all around the world, you know, that's enslaving the common man, the common woman. But is that really true, right? Put yourselves in the shoes of this person, right? Put yourself in the shoes of this person. And then vice versa, let that person project that person onto yourself, right? They are a person, right? They have needs, right? They're human, right? They have emotions. They have limitations in terms of the degree of the degree of influence that they have, the degree of control they have over other people and, you know, the world's resources and facilities, right? And most importantly of all, they have their own perspective, right? And this is the crunch, right? So past all of that, there is also, you know, well, this is something that comes about through, you know, in previous entries I talked about, you know, becoming open-minded by exploring different perspectives and different identities, you know, viewing things from different angles, right? You know, viewing something from someone else's shoes. This is the basis of empathy, right? And taking this, right, it is fair to assume that, like, everyone has their own perspective on things, right? And this is something you notice the more you interact with people on a deeper level, right? You realize that they have their own ways of seeing the world, right? That are distinct and separate from yours. There may be commonalities, but they have their own perspective, right? And essentially, what this boils down to is the question of, do you believe what you do is right? Right? Do you believe what you do is right? Of course you do, right? You know, and if you didn't, you'd be very aware of that, right? You'd be very aware that what you were doing was not what you truly believed in, right? And so, people have a tendency of doing things that they believe in, that they believe is right, right? And so, taking this, would it not apply to someone like that, you know? If someone were indeed to be pulling strings behind the scenes and committing all sorts of heinous acts of evil, you know, could it not be that from their twisted perspective, you know, that they believe that what they're doing is right, right? You know, it's the same with, like, you know, Hitler. I don't know, just pulling something out of my ass, but Hitler, you know, yeah, he killed like hundreds of thousands of people, potentially millions. I don't actually know the exact number, or even the ballpark number. But, you know, what would drive someone to do that thing? You know, and it's very easy to idolize him, you know, to turn him into some kind of satanic incarnation. But, you know, if you put yourself in his shoes, what would motivate you to do something like that, right? You have to see the humanity in this. You have to see, you know, that's the thing, right? In order for you to truly understand anything, in terms of, you know, human actions, even just like the nature of this universe, right? You have to go into how you feel, right? You have to see the humanity. You have to go into how you feel, right? And, you know, this is another plug towards tapping into your sensitivity, right? But, you know, if you were in Hitler's shoes and you were as deranged as him, you'd probably see what he was doing as completely right as well, right? And so, what I'm saying is, yes, there might potentially be people like Hitler out there, like Saddam Hussein, like some of the corrupt political and religious leaders in the world. But, you know, the most important thing is that you yourself are not feeding your energy into this idolization that, you know, that is our tendency to do, right? Because once we do that, we release the responsibility that we have on our own lives, right? And the only hope that we have to change our lives, right, is to focus on, you know, our own self-actualization, right? Taking responsibility for our own lives and our own actions, our own thinking, right? And so, yes, idolization, you know, it's a very subtle thing, you know, but, you know, it happens everywhere, you know, not just in, you know, this kind of thing where it's like political, economical, socio-economic, I guess you could say, in terms of, you know, entertainment, you know, industrial, it's just like tiny things, like where you find yourselves taking kind of like a black and white stance on something, where it's like, oh, if it weren't for this, my life would be fucking amazing, or like, if it weren't for this person, like, my life would be amazing, and then like basically pigeonholing that thing as either this kind of harbinger of death, or, you know, this you know, the epitome of saintlyhood. I don't know if it's a word. You know, yeah, you know, so basically, you know, you can't be going around, you know, just like seeing things in these black and white terms. You know, you need to develop your perspective to be able to see, to understand, to strive to understand that thing, right? And understanding takes responsibility, right? To understand or not to understand, right? A lot of people choose not to understand. And understanding is something that happens both ways. So if you do not strive to understand yourself, you simultaneously do not strive to understand other people, and vice versa, right? So understanding, like love, I guess, is a choice, right? You take. So in order to, you know, so either you understand or you don't, you strive to understand or you don't strive to understand, right? And from that choice will basically spawn the rest of your life circumstances in terms of how you choose to see the world, right? And so, yeah, just an observation that I wanted to share with you. You know, just maybe that has been verbalized in by other people, but just like, I just wanted to give my own take on this kind of phenomenon that I've noticed in people and in myself, you know. And there was one more thing I wanted to say. Let's see if I can remember it. Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. So basically, my take-home message for this entry is just to be careful around the areas where you find yourself basically blaming something or someone for something that is supposedly out of your control, or just yeah, or just when complaining about something, or catching yourself, you know, just shoving something onto someone else, right? Good or bad, right? Because that is probably an area where you are running away from, right? And if you go into this area of fear, of hope, directly, and you challenge it, right? You challenge the mental idol that you've constructed, then you will come out of it with a shitload of awareness on the other end, right? You will learn a lot about yourself, and the world, right, of existence, and your perception of existence will deepen and enrich in itself. So cool. That was me blabbering on about that for like, 15 minutes, but that's cool. I hope that was insightful, and I'll see you in the next century. Peace.